Welcome back in. We are back with our week 7 waiver wire ads. A little later than I was hoping for, but we are here. Let's go ahead and get to it. We don't have a lot to talk about in terms of bye weeks this week because we only have the Ravens and Bills that are on buys this week, but we are starting the heavy bye weeks after week 7. So this week should be a little bit easier to get through, but let's go ahead and get to it. We're going to start with our top streaming ads of the week at the quarterback position, and we are going to start with Sam Darnold, who's still somehow available. It was only rostered in only 35% of leagues. Darnold completed 16 of 27 passes for 295 yards and 2 scores for 20 fantasy points. Darnold's now thrown for 2 or more touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 games and has scored 20 and 28 fantasy points over his last 2. Darnold is a very viable streaming option against a tough Texas defense. This offense has been one of the most efficient in the league. Sam Darnold ranks top 5 in fantasy points per dropback. He ranks top 5 in yards per attempt. So Sam Darnold is more than just a streaming ad. I think he is a must add for any team that is really needing a quarterback at this point. So let's keep it moving here and let's move over to Bryce Young. Now, Bryce Young had one of his best games of the season, completing 17 of 25 for 199 yards and 3 touchdowns for 19 fantasy points. Now, he hasn't really gotten there from a yardage standpoint. He's only surpassed 200 passing yards once all year. But it's hard to deny that with a solid matchup coming up against the Jets this week, it is a little bit in terms of him, like he's not being asked to throw the ball a ton right now because of how good Rico Dowdle has played. Rico Dowdle has been an absolute monster of the last 2 weeks of the season. And it really kind of takes me back to like the ball knowers of Jay Ajayi whenever Jay Ajayi kind of burst onto the scene. Now, obviously, this isn't necessarily Rico Dowdle's first stint here, playing football. Obviously, he played with the Cowboys last year, but this run that he's on kind of reminds me of that Jay Ajayi run back whenever I think he was a rookie. So, anyways, Bryce Young, I think you can look to him as a streaming option. As you'll notice with this list, there's not a ton of great streaming options for this week, at least quarterbacks that are in really good spots. There's a lot of tougher matchups this week, but keep moving here. Let's talk about Spencer Rattler. Rattler hasn't been great, but he's also hasn't been terrible either. He's kind of been pretty average. Today, he completed 20 of 26 passes for 227 yards. He also added 20 yards rushing on 4 carries. The Saints now are currently first in pace of play and sixth in pass attempts per game, leading to plenty of opportunities for fantasy production. Now, the lack of touchdowns has really been what's hurting his upside. However, next up is a matchup against the Bears, who have the fifth most fantasy points at quarterbacks. If you're absolutely desperate, Spencer Rattler is somebody that I think you can look at. And then lastly, Michael Penix, rostered in 22% of leagues. Now, Penix is yet to play, obviously, as he plays tomorrow night. But before their week 5 bye, he did throw for 313 yards, 2 scores for 20 fantasy points. And, after this matchup against the Bills tomorrow night, they get to take on a very banged up 49ers defense, followed by another great matchup against the Dolphins. I think making Penix a multi-week start for the quarterback position. And I also put Jackson Dart on here. They get a really bad matchup this week against the Broncos. The Broncos defense has been very good. But, with his running ability, it's going to allow him to have a safer floor. But I will say the matchup is not great. Let's move over to the running back position where I think the top waiver ad of the week is going to come from because Kamani Vidal is only rostered in 28% of leagues. And if there was any question who the top running back was heading into week 6 for the Chargers, that question has been put to rest. Vidal carried the ball 18 times for 124 yards and caught 3 of 4 targets for another 14 yards and a touchdown for 22 fantasy points against the Dolphins. Vidal out-touched Haskins 23-7. We also got news today that Hampton is expected to miss more time than the original 4 games that was initially reported. Now, with all that being said, it should be noted that this matchup was one of the best you could get for the Dolphins, having been thrashed by running backs all year. The Chargers get 2 tougher matchups against the Colts and Vikings at home before they get another cupcake against the Titans. All that being said, Vidal is easily the best ad for the people who left him on the waivers because he's only rostered in 28% of leagues. I thought he was going to be rostered higher than that. But he is not. So he is widely available in many leagues. So Vidal is easily the top waiver ad of the week. And then next up is going to be Bam Knight. Now, after all week thinking Michael Carter would be the lead back, we got news Sunday morning from Adam Schefter that Bam Knight would be the lead back. Carter would be the RB2. Well, that was true. Knight only received 2 more touches than Michael Carter. What saved Knight was a 1-yard touchdown. Knight has now scored a touchdown back-to-back weeks. Knight is nothing more than a low-end flex this week, though, against a Packers defense that has been stout against the run all year before they go into their Week 8 bye. Let's move over to just a couple of handcuffs that I wanted to hit on really quickly. Jaden Blue rostered only 15% of leagues. Miles Sanders was placed on season-ending IR. That opens the door for more touches for Jaden Blue. Well, he's only seen 7 total touches through 2 weeks. The door is open for him to take on a larger role and would be the lead back if anything were to happen to Javonte Williams. Next up, Tyler Algier. I still don't understand why he's only rostered 31% of leagues. He has seen 10 or more touches in 3 of his last 4 games heading into this week 6 game against the Bills. And he is the best handcuff for the league and offers true standalone value. He should be rostered in way more leagues than he is right now. If he's sitting out there on your waiver ad, or if you're out there on your waiver wire, change that. He should not be. He's somebody that you can plug in for a flex option. And like I said, if something happens to Bijan Robinson, he's going to be easily the top waiver ad of whatever week, and you're going to be spending whatever fab you have left to get him. Let's keep it moving here. Let's move over to Kendre Miller. Miller rushed 8 times for 21 yards and was targeted once for 11 yards. Nothing special, but he's going to continue to handle a decent workload. It has flex value every single week. He's had 9 or more touches in 3 straight games, which is exactly what you should be looking for, especially with bye weeks and everything else. This is something you should definitely be looking for, someone like Kendre Miller. And we could put to bed also the Alvin Kamara trade rumors, I think, as well. But either way, I still think Kendre Miller is going to have a role, especially with how fast-paced this offense is. Lastly, I want to talk about Tajay Spears. He's only rostered in 22% of leagues. Spears rushed 5 times for 31 yards, caught all 4 targets for 9 PPR points. Obviously, nothing special. But Spears is the primary pass catching back. And honestly, he looks like he has more juice at this point than Tony Pollard. We know that Spears. We also know what Spears is capable of, as he has put up 3 straight top 12 weeks in Tony Pollard's absence last season. So he's a viable flex option moving forward. It would be an RB2 if Pollard were to ever forced to miss any sort of time. So, and then after that, it's just your normal other, handcuff guys. You're also your players that if an injury were to happen, like a DJ Giddens, Ray Davis, Brian Robinson Jr. Blake Corum got a little banged up today, but he was able to return. And then Taj Brooks, Will Shipley, like all these guys are simply handcuffs that don't really offer much in terms of standalone value. Let's move over to the wide receiver position. And honestly, there's not a ton to talk about here either, but there's a couple of note. Obviously, Kendrick Bourne had another really good game today. Roster still only in 33% of leagues. I would have been much higher on Kendrick Bourne this week had I known Juwan Jennings was actually playing through 5 broken ribs, a high ankle sprain, and a low ankle sprain. Which is exactly what he said after the game. This was not the information that was widely available or that was put out. And so this is not something that I really anybody had any idea of. And really it looked like Juwan Jennings was kind of just out there. Kendrick Bourne stepped up again. He had another big week, catching 5 of 9 targets for 142 yards and 19 PPR points. And with all the injuries to this offense, Bourne should continue to see a healthy target share, even if George Kittle is able to return this week. Because it does sound like Kittle should return this week. This was kind of been all of the reports that he should be good to go by week 7. Now, Brandon Ayuk's obviously not really anywhere close to being able to return. Ricky Pearsall sounds like it's going to be a multi-week injury. And then with the Juwan Jennings news, I think Kendrick Bourne is at least aligned for at least another week to be a solid waiver wire play and a solid flex option for most people this week. Next up is going to be Josh Downs, rostered in 44% of leagues. Now, it has been a great year for Downs, as Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman have really been the preferred targets for most of the season. However, the last 2 weeks, Downs has been targeted 15 times. Today, he was targeted 7 times for 42 yards and 8 touchdowns for 16 PPR points. And I think he's going to continue to be a viable PPR flex option next week against the Chargers. But only thing with him is I don't think he has a very high touchdown ceiling. And most of his stuff is going to be very short yardage. He's not really targeted downfield. And so when it comes to Josh Downs, I think he is much more of a full PPR type ad than a half point or even definitely not a standard league ad. So let's keep moving. We're going to move over to a player that we've already talked about once this year. We're going to be talking about him again, and that's going to be Kayshon Boutte. He's rostered in 7% of leagues. Now, we've been here before with Boutte after he was a waiver wire ad after bringing in 6 of 8 targets for 103 yards week 1. But since then, he's been pretty quiet until today, where he caught 5 targets for 93 yards and 2 touchdowns for 26 fantasy points. I think he's worth an ad, but the Patriots spread the ball around so much that I don't know how much we'll be able to trust him on a week-to-week basis. But this was an encouraging game for him, and I still think at the very least in 12-team leagues with deeper benches, someone like Kayshon Boutte should probably be on your bench. Let's move over to some deeper league ads that we need to talk about, because I don't think anybody else really meets the criteria of like a must-add type player. And so let's talk about the Bucs wide receiver room. Emeka Egbuka left early with a hamstring injury. We'll have to wait and see on his status, but Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were both obviously out for this game as well. It was actually Cameron Johnson who stepped up for the Bucs. Johnson is a 2024 undrafted free agent, but was given an opportunity and he ran with it. He caught 4 targets for 64 yards and a touchdown. And while the other Johnson, Tez Johnson, was targeted 3 times, and he held just one of them for a 45-yard touchdown. There was plenty. Now there's going to be plenty to monitor this week with the Bucs. There's been some talk that maybe Mike Evans could return this week after missing the last 3 games, the hamstring injury. If Egbuka and Godwin were to miss, I think Cameron Johnson looks like he could be the wide receiver to own in a phenomenal matchup against the Lions defense that has yielded the 5th most PPR points. But this is going to definitely be a switch. We're just going to have to monitor all week. I'm not going to be out there spending any fab or waiver priorities on any of the Johnson wide receivers, whether it's Cameron or Tez Johnson, because I just don't know what's going to happen this week with all their injuries to their wide receivers. But if most of these guys are out, like Egbuka and Chris Godwin, then I think Cameron Johnson would probably be the guy that I'd want to add. Let's keep it moving. Let's move over to Zay Jones, rostered 1% of leagues. Now, this would just be a 1-week ad after Marvin Harrison left with a concussion. Zay Jones stepped up, caught 5 of 8 targets for 79 yards for 12.9 PPR points. Now I'll say Jacoby Brissett actually played pretty well today, going for 320 yards and 2 scores. If Marvin Harrison misses, though, Zay Jones would be a flex option / wide receiver 4 against a pretty good Packers defense. Excuse me, Alec Maynard, I have talked about him a lot, but this offense does not look very good for any extended period of time this year. But Calvin Ridley left early with a hamstring injury. Van Jefferson ended up having the best day, 4 catches, 75 yards. A.O. Maynard was targeted 5 times, but only caught 3 for 27. While one of those was an end zone target, he was not able to come up with it. A.O. Maynard, though, is worth a stash in the event this offense ever figures things out and gets going. And then I also want to put out there stashing rookie wide receivers. It's a great time to be stashing rookie wide receivers like Luther Burden and Jaden Higgins. Both should be rostered way more leagues than they are. We typically see breakouts from rookie wide receivers in the second half of the season. So someone like Luther Burden, if you have an open roster spot, you have somebody that you can put in IR, somebody that you could possibly drop. Like I would want to add Luther Burden coming off their bye week. We typically see wide receivers, especially rookie wide receivers, kind of get more involved, get extended run after their bye week. So Luther Burden, before he plays tomorrow night, would be somebody that I would look to that you could already add ahead of the waiver wire run in week 7. Now let's move over to the tight end position, where I think we have the most to talk about, because I think there's actually a lot of different options this week we can go through. First, we're going to talk about Mason Taylor, and I'm sure you're probably thinking, well, Mason Taylor did absolutely nothing. Why would I want to pick up Mason Taylor? First, he's only rostered in 33% of leagues, and yes, it was a brutal matchup against the Broncos today here. But let's face it, this entire Jets offense was terrible. Justin Fields only completed 9 of 17 passes in this ugly game, and it's hard for anyone to really have a good day. Now, things should turn around pretty quickly, though, as the Jets get matchups against the Panthers and the Bengals over the next 2 weeks. The Panthers have allowed the second most fantasy points, and the Bengals have allowed the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. And I think that makes Taylor probably the best ad off the waivers this week if he's sitting out there. Next up is going to be Harold Fannin. Now, David Njoku left with an injury, and he kind of gave us a glimpse of what life could be like if the veteran tight end David Njoku were to be traded at the deadline, which there are plenty of reports and rumors out there that the Browns could possibly move on from David Njoku. And Fannin was actually second on the team with 10 targets. He turned that into 7 for 81. And the Browns have a favorable upcoming schedule for their passing attack with matchups against the Dolphins and the Patriots, who have allowed the 8th and the 7th most PPR points to tight ends. And we'll have to monitor the status of Njoku, who left with a knee injury, because if he is forced to miss, then Harold Fannin would be right there behind Mason Taylor for me as one of the best ads of the week at tight end position. Now, these are a little bit more streaming options. Cade Otton, with all the injuries to the Bucs pass catchers, Otton saw 7 targets, which was the most he's seen in any game this season. He turned that into 5 for 51. Otton figures to be a high-end tight end too if Egbuka and Godwin are forced to miss next week against the Lions. And then Michael Mayer, rostered in only 2% of leagues. Mayer returned after missing 2 weeks and got the start for Brock Bowers. He turned that into 5 for 50 and a score on 7 targets for 16 PPR points. Now, with so few weapons for the Raiders passing attack, Mayer will likely continue to have a strong role for as long as Bowers is out. And with the Raiders going on a bye in week 8, I think there's a pretty strong chance that he's going to be out for that one, making Mayer a strong tight end too against the Chiefs on the road. And then lastly, I put Jake Tonjes on here just in case George Kittle isn't able to make it back, if they open up his window, but they decide not to have him play, because I do think that he would be a very viable flex option. He's been a pretty strong option the last 2 or 3 weeks with Mac Jones. And then Dalton Schultz, I put on here as well. I think he's at least in deeper formats. If you're desperate for a tight end, Dalton Schultz is widely available. They get a Sunday night matchup against the Seahawks, which is actually a pretty solid matchup for tight ends as well. So those are kind of the best tight end options we'll be looking at there. Let's move over to some of the questions we have here. First, Rupp, Lions should have won that, but good I started Hollywood. I mean, like, I guess, like, I felt like that game was close, like, early, and then that once the failed, trick play to Jared Goff, it sort of felt like the game kind of switched a little bit after that. But yeah, I mean, the Lions are obviously going to be fine. They're obviously suffering from a ton of injuries in that secondary, which most of those guys should be back. Much better days are ahead for the Lions. So I want to rage drop Worthy so much. It is frustrating with Worthy because that now that Rashee Rice is back, like he's going to be very hit or miss, because I fully expect Rashee Rice to be dominating targets from Patrick Mahomes. It's exactly what we saw last year before he got hurt. Now, obviously, we haven't seen him in a while, but I fully expect Rashee Rice is going to lead this team in targets. I would expect Travis Kelce to be too. And I think, but at the same time, this could also just open up more things down the field for Xavier Worthy to be able to see more deep targets. Now, the Chiefs didn't really try to do anything down the field in this game, and I think some of it had to do with Josh Simmons, who missed. I don't think they really trust the offensive line that much to give them that much time, especially with like Aiden Hutchinson and the Lions, front four being able to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes. So I felt like it was very much a get the ball out of their hand very quickly, which is not something we've seen recently. So I do think better days are ahead for Xavier Worthy, but it's going to be frustrating, especially with the return of Rashee Rice, because now you have Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. Tyquan Thornton is still going to get some room. Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, there's so many pass catchers now in this for this wide receiver room that I think it's going to be a little bit harder to rely on a week-to-week basis. I have Bo, so yeah, I'll add Darnold for buys and better matchups. Yeah, Bo Nix has really been bad this year. I was thinking about this today, and some of it's hard to blame Bo Nix whenever I think so far they have done a serious disservice right now to Bo Nix, because they didn't do anything this offseason to add weapons around Bo Nix. Like, the biggest cheat code for a rookie quarterback is being able to build around and being able to add all these weapons and do stuff with your rookie quarterback. And obviously they have one of the best defenses in the league, but Cortland Sutton is not a number one wide receiver. He is a number two wide receiver. He is not like an elite alpha playmaking wide receiver. He's definitely a number two wide receiver. And then just adding Evan Ingram, which I don't really see that big of an upgrade for anything that they had in their offense. And then through the draft, they added Pat Bryant. Like, they just haven't done a lot to add much for Bo Nix. And I think you're seeing some of that, a little bit of a second-year struggle from Bo Nix. Now, could he turn it around? Sure. Like, I don't think this is going to be an all-year thing where Bo Nix is going to be terrible. But if people want to drop Bo Nix, like, I am perfectly okay with it at this point, because this offense just does not look very good at this point. And now I will say next week they do get the Giants, which, that is a better matchup. So I think we'll see how things look here, at home against the Giants. And then Junkins told me this week, why did I drop Flacco for Gabriel as well? Should have played Brissett over. Yeah, but like, honestly, like, when it comes to Jacoby Brissett, like, he is like last year. Now, again, I kind of talk about this, but I mean, with different weapons, right, with the Patriots, but he was terrible last year for the Patriots. And now he looked great today, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that was really without Marvin Harrison for most of the game. It was really just Trey McBride, Zay Jones, Greg Dortch, but he looked really good today. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I wouldn't get too upset over whatever decisions you made to not play Jacoby Brissett. One catch for Jennings was great. So yeah, like I said, like, I don't think anybody knew that. Nobody knew how many injuries he was dealing with. Like, if I would have known all of that prior to today, then I would not have had any interest in playing Juwan Jennings at all. Like, it was wild. Who should I trade Travion Henderson for? Nothing at this point. I mean, you're not going to be able to get anything of value for him. I will say, though, it's turning into a 50-50 split, but the problem is Henderson's not getting any goal line work, any red zone work. It's all it's all Ramondre Stevenson. I don't know what they have to do to get Travion Henderson more opportunities, but I don't think you're really going to be able to trade him for anything. Maybe for Vidal Kamara, it's going to be hard to trade. Yeah, like I said, like it's going to be really hard to trade him at this point. So, um, Marks or Chubb, if or Marks or Chubb, if Chua doesn't play next week, I'm playing one of them. Honestly, at this point, that's actually like I don't think Chuba's getting this job back. I don't think that's happening. Um, like there's no shot that Rico Dowdle could come out and put up 400 total yards over the last 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden, like, all right, Chuba, come on, you're coming back. You're going to play 70% of the snaps. Rico, you're going to go back to only playing 30% of the snaps. Like, you don't put this back in the bottle. And I know they're paying Chuba Hubbard a decent amount of money at this point, but there is zero shot at this point that they're going to go back to Chuba Hubbard. So like I just do not see it. Do not see it whatsoever that they're going to go back to Chuba Hubbard. Like Chuba Hubbard's still going to be involved. He's going to have opportunity, but I think now things are going to switch, and you're going to have Rico Dowdle getting the bulk of the offense or bulk of the opportunities in the backfield, with Chuba just being kind of like the or the Rico Dowdle role that he had prior to that, where he's probably going to get like 8 to 10 touches. But if anything else happens, I would be shocked. Like I would be truly shocked if Rico Dowdle lost any significant role at this point. Wish I would have played your Rams or Pats instead of the Jags. They were taken. Love your defense, streams, Kev. Thanks for the vids. Yeah, I appreciate you checking them out. Bears for week 7. I picked them up ahead of time just in case. The Bears are playing the Saints. So, like, the frustrating thing with the playing the Saints, I think we've targeted the Saints all year. And the Saints just, they're, in terms of like targeting their offense, they really haven't been terrible. Like they haven't been great by any means. I think they're like anytime you stream a defense against the Saints, like I feel like they're fine, but like they're not like this like the Ravens have been the last 2 weeks. Like oh, we're doing whatever. We're going to target the Ravens defense or offense because their offense is so bad. The Saints are going to provide you like a decent floor, right? But they're not going to give you uh, a high ceiling for the most part. Because Spencer Rattler has done a decent job of not really turning the ball over a ton. He has interceptions here and there for sure, but uh, I think overall, like it's just been tougher. But when it comes to the Bears, like if you want to, like I don't hate it. Like if you're desperate for a defense, I think the Chiefs are definitely going to be one probably to talk about this week because the Chiefs are widely available for most leagues, especially with the matchup against the Lions this week, where a lot of people weren't going to want to roster them against them. So in a matchup against the Raiders, love the Chiefs defense, I think, as a streaming option this week. I actually think the Panthers are a really good streaming option this week, who are probably also widely available. Patriots are going to be right back in that bucket as well. And then I think that's probably, at least just off the top of my head, those are probably going to be the ones that I'm most interested in for this week. So definitely we'll be doing some more digging. We'll have that out tomorrow. Or yeah, no, Tuesday. I'll be out Tuesday, probably Tuesday morning. Anyways, Rams defense was solid. Even Boswell said Schrader was injured for a minute. I thought he was injured. Yeah, that field that they were playing on today in Pittsburgh was absolutely brutal today for the uh, for the Steelers. Like Boswell, like that one field goal, like where he missed, like I can't blame him for it. I mean, that field was I don't know how NFL fields end up looking like the way some of these fields do at times. Like it's an absolute joke. So, yeah. Anyways, that being said, like I guess for the most part, like this wasn't a crazy waiver wire week for the most of us, right? Like it was, it all things considered, we didn't have a ton of injuries so far. I've obviously there's still 2 games left, but for the most part, we've been pretty lucky for this week with injuries. Ekbuka seems like the biggest one at this point that we're gonna have to monitor. But in terms of the running backs, we didn't have anything major to really talk about, so that is a positive because it's been a bloodbath the last couple of weeks. And week 7 at least is a pretty easy bye week with the Ravens and then the Bills, which obviously not having Josh Allen this week and James Cook, but for the most part, I think we'll be okay because after that, buys really start kicking in over the next 2 or 3 weeks, where you have some heavy bye weeks coming. So that we'll have a lot more to talk about then. So that being said, Appreciate everybody checking it out. I think that was the last question we had in here. We'll be back again for our top defense and kicker streaming ads of the week here. It'll be out Tuesday morning. We'll be back out again Wednesday with our must plays at every single position where we cover the quarterbacks, the running backs, the tight ends, and the wide receivers. Instead of you having to go to multiple different videos to watch all this, I put it all in one. Your top plays of the week, and then we'll be back Wednesday night to answer all your questions live on Wednesday night. So have a good rest of the night. Enjoy the 2 games tomorrow. Hopefully we have no injuries to talk about from that, and we'll see you on the next one.